Mark, what's going on, man? Welcome to the Dad Edge, my friend. It's so good to see you.
I am so excited to be here. As we were talking right before we jumped on, man, when I first heard about you and your podcast and the love and the support and the help and the skills and the better life you're bringing, um, it's not only important, it's critically important. So when I was asked if I would jump on here, I was super, super excited to do so.
I'm so excited, man. I'm really excited that you're here. And you're right. I don't know if you've seen like even the recent statistics. I remember, by the way, it's President's Day as we record, even though this show is going out like the day after St. Patrick's Day. But if you hear my kids in the background, I have four boys, man. I know you have two girls. I have four boys. I always joke that having a 17-year-old, 16-year-old, 10-year-old, 8-year-old, and they're off school, it's like a fraternity house where everybody's drunk and you just don't leave. So if you hear shenanigans happening in the background, just that's my life right now, Mark.
I love it. It's so funny. I had the opposite. I had everyone in my family was female. Even the
Right.
cat was female. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? It was I had two daughters, I had a wife, and it was all female energy. And then the mother-in-law and the sister-in-law, all it was all like women in my family. And I was so not ready for girls. I was ready for boys.
Yeah.
I was going
Yeah.
to teach them martial arts. I was going to teach them how to track animals. I was going to teach them all the cool stuff that we did as boys. But God blessed me with two beautiful girls, and holy crap, did I have to step up my game, and I wouldn't change it for the world. And I did teach them how to track animals, and we did go do a lot of stuff, and I ran with them tens of thousands of miles probably when they got involved in cross country and running. But just blessed beyond measure. And I know you feel that way about your boys, but man, boy energy and girl energy, it's a different. They're both blessings in their own way.
Man, I can't wait to hear more. We're gonna talk all about those things, man. Like I'm so curious running all these miles and tracking animals and martial arts. Like we're gonna dive into that because I always joke with the audience. I'm like, man, I don't know girls. Like I don't know this girl dad advice. So it's always so refreshing when we have a girl dad who has raised strong, confident, resilient young women. And because men are really intrigued by that. They're like, how do I do that and do that well? So we're gonna hit on that. But like let's start out with some fun questions. I'd really love to know what it was like for you growing up. Like what was the sport that Mark was most excited about growing up, or anything like that? I'd love to hear what your family looked like growing up.
Reader's Digest version. My dad was a child movie star. He was also ended up was the third largest developer in California. He was in Black Ops with the military. Did that for a long time. He was the CEO of many corporations, and he was also a functioning alcoholic. And my mom was Miss Norway from the Miss Universe pageant. She was also on, I forget the guy's name, Groucho Marx show and a bunch of other stuff. And then she also was a badass, but she also was an alcoholic. So I grew up in a very dysfunctional family, which on one hand, I moved 14 times in 14 years, even though my dad was a multimillionaire many times, but then he would drink out of it. He would drink himself. He walked away from one of them because he was mad at the other partners wouldn't do something his way, and they were mad at him because he was drunk by 3 in the afternoon. So all this kind of stuff, and it was completely dysfunctional, and there was emotional and physical abuse. That being said, my dad also was crazy in the right way, where he gave me a shotgun when I was in third grade. He got us a surfboard in third grade. He got us motorcycles. He got us go-karts. He got us into martial arts. And he was like a living Big Fish, the movie. So, I had scuba tanks strapped on my back when I was about 8, 9 years old. And now you have to be 12 before you can even get certified. So I loved that about my dad. And they split up in about sixth grade, but dad got me really into baseball, football, soccer. But where I really thrived was I was great at all of that. I led the league in hitting every year I did it. I led the league in stolen bases. I led the league in shit talking. I mean, oh man, I was bad. I made the guy from Bad News Bears, Tanner, look like a choir boy. And I used to have a cheering crowd that would come watch me because of my antics. I wasn't doing it as a show. I just loved it. And I had something like a 740 batting average. And I mean, I'd get a single, steal second, steal third, and steal home, and I'd be talking the whole time. But when I got to martial arts, that's where it really clicked. And I was really small, but when I was sixth grade, seventh grade, it was early before, right when Bruce Lee came to the US, it was probably 1972. And martial arts was just a couple of movies that we saw, like Good Guys Wear Black was
Yeah.
Chuck Norris's first,
Yeah.
Five Fingers of Death, and then Kung Fu came out. And my brother and I would go upstairs and beat the crap out of each other, practicing our martial arts. And then dad got us enrolled in the only martial arts school at the time in South Orange County. And I was about 45 pounds, maybe 40, 45 pounds. And I was probably about 4'5", 4'6". So I was really small, but I took to it like a fish to water. And the next thing you know, I was fighting in high school and limited division, 45, 50 pounds, somewhere in that range. And I was fighting guys 150 to 200 pounds. And I never lost. For whatever reason, it clicked they used to say I was like watching a pit bull attack a wounded poodle. Didn't matter who I was against, but I knew kicks that I couldn't normally explain, and I started training with the adults very very quickly because my for whatever reason my skills were way above, and I loved it. Martial arts to this day is like my if there was one thing that encapsulates all the stuff I love to do, it would be martial arts.
And what was the style of martial art you did when you were younger?
I started with Muda Kwan Tang Sudo, which was what Chuck Norris was
Chuck
in, and it's a
Norris.
Korean art. And then he was one of the three uh, autographs that I got in my lifetime. Steve Garvey, Chuck Norris, and Bob Barker, all three legends. So, but yeah, I for whatever reason I started in Tang Soo Do. Then as I later I got into Mudok Kwan Taekwondo and got a second degree in that. And then I got into Kuk Sool Won, which is my
No way.
favorite. Yeah, my
That's what I
absolute
did.
favorite. Kuk Sool Won
I
is the
did that for
best.
8 years, man. I love that.
The best art out of them all. And then I,
Yeah.
after that, got into Jido Kwan because finding a Kuk Sool school is almost impossible unless you're in Texas.
Yep.
So I ended up going into Jido Kwan, which was very similar to Taekwondo. It was Jido Kwan traditional Taekwondo, which was also Hapkido woven in. So we did a lot of that, and I just love it. So, and then I got into target focus training, which was Navy SEAL, what they teach at SEAL team. That was also fun.
Man, that is so cool. It's very rare. You know, I there's only two schools here in Missouri for Cook One, and they're actually almost pretty much in my backyard where I live. And I did Cook One for 8 years. I loved Cook. A lot of
Same
people
here.
like, when people ask, they're like, "Well, what martial arts do you take?" And I've taken a few. I did a little bit of Kung Fu. I did
Me too.
Taekwondo for years. I did a little bit of jujitsu, but Kuk One is where actually I stayed the longest, and I really really liked it. I loved the Hapkido portion of it,
Same.
and a lot of people were like, "What is Kuk One?" I was like, "It's pretty much it's a traditional Korean martial art that combines Taekwondo and Hapkido together with weapons, right?"
Yeah.
And my instructor, man, he was brutal, like absolutely brutal. He really really bought into the fact that every single belt test, it wasn't a test, it was an experience. So like my very first test going from white belt to yellow belt was 8 hours long, and every
Nice.
test after that was a minimum of 6 to 8 hours. My Dabonim test, which is the black brown test,
Yeah.
was 12 hours long. I never felt pain in my life like that. Like
Yeah.
just absolutely, it was all day long. We got started at 8 o'clock in the morning and we got done at 8 p.m. that night. It was crazy, man.
I get it. I was so blessed to have Sabonim Chang as my instructor, but he was also a sixth or seventh degree in Taekwondo and Mudok Kwan Taekwondo, which was there, and he was about a sixth degree in fifth or sixth degree in Kuk Sool. But because I was the top student, he started teaching me privately. So I was doing my Taekwondo path, which was a very hard style. Didn't pull punches. If you got pull punches, Master Byung Yu would come out from behind and kick everyone's ass. So it was hardcore. And he said that that was really good because then he was teaching me Kuk Sool, and then I trained with him under Kuk Sool. But our black belt test, the first black belt test for Taekwondo was 2 days. So I totally get the first day you had to run 4 miles under a time. If you didn't meet the time, you dropped. You had to do stair endurance for a certain amount of stairs. If you didn't fit it right into this stair endurance, if you didn't do that, then you had to do a 440 backwards run. If you didn't hit a time, you're out. Then you had to do a certain number of push-ups, sit-ups. The whole day was basically testing the body and the mind about what you could do. The second day, you'll appreciate this. And there was a saying, if you got away with a few broken bones and a broken nose, you did really good. The second day, you go through all of the kicks. And as
Yeah.
you know, in Taekwondo, there's a zillion of them.
Yeah.
And they had to be maybe 50 or 100 because you had this long dojang and you go all the way and, all the kicks, every form, front stance, back stance, cat stance, lion stance in every one. Then after you do that, then you had to do all the hand techniques. Then you had to do all of the forms. Then you had to do all the self defenses. Then you had to do the breaks. Then you had to do the sparring. And the sparring was full contact, and it started out with black belts from fifth degree down to third usually,
Yeah.
and then a line of red belts here, and you'd fight one-on-one at first, right? For two
Yep.
minutes, 3 minutes, full contact. Then it's two-on-one, two instructors against you. Then it's three instructors against you, then four instructors and five instructors. And I mean, they're better than you to begin with. And now to have more of them. So you had to learn strategies and holy moly. But I also found for him, he had a different thing. You had already passed unless you screwed it up before you got there because you weren't invited unless he saw black belt in you. The black belt in this case was a purification to see if you were worthy to wear the belt. And it was an honorary thing that was kind of like getting jumped in a gang on a positive way. I'll tell you a funny story. 2 weeks before a black belt test, I've been training here now for like 5 years. 2 weeks beforehand, I hear this blood curdling screaming coming from the dojang. I run up to the door and I open the door, and there's Master Byung Yu with two black belts and him pushing somebody down past vertical in the splits. And each one of us holding their legs and they're pushing him down. And he looks to me and immediately goes, Mr. Von Musser, get upstairs and get ready for super stretch. Oh man,
Oh
this
my
was the
God.
one thing that I was not great at. I had had
Yeah.
so many adductor tears and my crotch was locked. I could get like this to the splits, side splits, but that was unacceptable to him. If you were not upside down in your split, it wasn't count. He called me yellow belt stretch because I was about 3 or 4 inches from full splits. And so I come down and he starts doing it to me. I blacked out somewhere in the process. I literally don't remember. It was that painful. Apparently the cops came, and the cops came with their guns drawn, is like because
No way.
people started calling for the blood curdling screams. I don't remember any of this, but what I found was the six of us that had he was prepping for black belt test, that was the final test. Only three or four of us, I can't remember, but two or three of the people quit, said I'm out, they're not going to do this, and then never saw him again. And so it was really interesting though. It was like holy moly, but that was a very interesting black belt test as well.
Mm, man, that is wild.
It was
Absolutely wild.
crazy.
Yeah, I love that, man. What a cool story.
It was
Um,
fun.
yeah, yeah, it is. And if anything, like I think a lot of people, they view certain martial arts as like a black belt factory, which I think some
There.
schools are, right? But then you get these gems, like your experience and my experience. Like you had to earn every single belt that you had. And it was exactly that. It was like, hey, I already know you're gonna be, a brown belt, right? I get it, right? But I'm going to put you through an experience I love the term that you use, purification, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
almost like I'm going to put you through an experience to make you earn this thing, to make sure that this is more of a rite of passage. It's not a belt
Yeah.
test, right? And I love that, man. That's so cool.
It reminded me very similar of something. I had the blessing to be able to go through Navy SEAL training as well at Buds, and I didn't make it. I tore my meniscus and broke my legs. But while I was there, I was top three in every category they would score. And I was thriving and I loved it and I hated it all at the same time. But what it really did was show me that whatever I thought was my limit was about 1/20th of what I could do. And when I thought I couldn't run anymore, 4 miles later, I'm still going. When I thought I couldn't, I almost set the record for the fastest obstacle course time. I was number two that had ever done it. And I wasn't allowed to do commando. But the way I got hurt was after I set the second fastest time, they said, now do it again and beat your time. But the problem was there was 30 guys, 40 guys already on the course. So I had to try and beat the time while they were on there. And as I went around what's called the Weaver, I went around the Weaver and there was a guy on it and he wouldn't move because he was trying to drag it out just to survive. I was trying to do a speed time and I had to try and go around him. And as I went around the over and under on these metal bars, my leg got caught on the side tire iron and I spun and tore my knee all to shreds. But I came away with a gift that what we think that we can do is a fraction of what we can do. And no offense, but we have been programmed, especially men, we have been programmed away from authentic masculine and what we're here to do. We're not as strong. Testosterone levels prove it. They're about 30% of what they were when we were kids. People have been emasculated in the news, in the media, in every sitcom. The dad is the butt of the joke. Now, what that does is it starts to pull down authentic masculine. Inauthentic masculine is the cause of crime. Inauthentic masculine are the people that rape people. Inauthentic masculine are the ones that are creating wars to stroke their ego and get their paychecks. So what I found though was that there is a depth of greatness within every man, and that's now what I have the blessing to spend my life doing, is helping human beings reconnect to their purpose, their greatness, and their passion. So there's a whole nother level, and I love that you're on that same journey helping people find it.
I think first of all, again, I love your story and I love your experience. Everything from martial arts to baseball to trash talking to Navy SEAL training and all this other stuff, everything in between, right? And so, but here's the cool thing about you, Mark. I mean, I've only known you for 15 minutes here, but like you're a real dude. Like you're a real human being, right? There's no smoke screens or anything like that. You are who you are. And I agree with you. The funny thing is this, like you'll appreciate this. I'm 48 years old and I don't take TRT. I never have. I don't like I work out all the time. I'm really into fitness and that kind of thing. And I had my normal physical like
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, 6 months ago. And my testosterone came back at like 1150.
That's fantastic.
Well, here's the funny thing. And you talk about these, these ranges, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the range on the high side, from what I understand, used to be 1296, right? But they've
Mm-hmm.
lowered that, I think, in the 900s now because the
Right.
population is now lower. So you'll appreciate this. My doctor was like, he's looking at my blood results and he's like, listen, I need you to be honest with me about something. I'm like, okay. He goes, are you taking steroids? And I'm like, I'm 170 pounds. Do I look like I take steroids? And he's like, do you take TRT? And I'm like, no. And he's like, I don't understand this. He's like, your testosterone is very high. It's like 1150. I can't remember what it was. It was in
Yeah.
the 1100s. And I'm like, was that a bad thing? I was like, last time I looked, I was like, I think that's a good thing, right? He's like, I'm really concerned that you have a tumor on your adrenals or on your testicles. I'm going to send you for an MRI. And I was like, are you serious? He's
Yeah.
like, yeah, this is way too high for your age. And I'm like, all right. So I went and got it done, came back totally normal. And he's just like, I guess you just have naturally high, testosterone. And I'm like, I guess I do. I was like, but I don't really drink alcohol. Like I eat
Yep.
clean. Like I do all these things that I think you're supposed to do with all these other things that people are doing. I make sure I get plenty of sleep. Like everybody else that I know, they're not doing those things. That's probably one of the reasons their testosterone is so low. But I wanna talk really quickly here about this perception, which by the way, I can't stand this. Like Peter Griffin, like
Right.
he's just a moron, but that's the way, they make men look these days, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
But like I don't understand that. And I know with your experience, I mean, man, you've done a whole host of different things. You work for Tony Robbins, like you've been exposed to like a lot of different human beings. And for the life of me, I don't really understand. I think the first exposure I had to sitcom or media making men look like total morons was Married with Children with
Yep.
Al Bundy,
Exactly.
right?
Yep.
But I never really understood, like it's never really sat well with me to watch these sitcoms and the dad is an idiot and the kids treat dad like an idiot. The mom treats dad like he's an idiot. And I'm like, this is not the case. Like the men I know, the men that really want to do life right, this is not the way that they do life. But why do you think that society is
Well,
this way?
if we want to go into quote unquote conspiracy theories, it aligns spot on. But if you look, for example, of Mao Zedong, how he overthrew China, if you look at what Stalin did to overthrow Russia, what not Hitler did to there, it's the same playbook. Now, either A, it's a coincidence, or B, it explains a lot. Now, I'm not saying for sure. I don't know. I'm just saying I've looked at that exact question, and that's the one to me that made the most sense. One of the things that they did in order to take over a country is you have to disconnect it from the love of the country. So you start talking about how bad the country is and about the mistakes the country made, because no country's perfect. But if you focus on that, then they're less likely to go ahead and fight for it. Number two is they disconnected us from pride of country and transferred that pride into something like a local sports team, where they'll go and be ravenous and burn dumpsters and burn fires and turn over cars when their team doesn't win or does. But that shifted the focus. The third aspect was to emasculate the men. And in China, what they did, and in Hitler and some of these other places, they emasculated the men, they masculized the females, where they literally would cut off their hair. They made them all dress in basically clothes that took away their identity. And they started doing that. Then they started making, the man and edifying the woman and then taking down the man. So I'd say if anybody's out there, don't take my word for it. You do your own research. You cannot look. And then there's also I've read and seen stories that the CIA got involved with Operation Mockingbird, where they started utilizing TV to shift social behavior. And they do that first. Anything that you want, if you go back 40, 50 years, what was approved then, and then what happens is they bring certain concepts onto those shows, making fun of the dad, the other agendas which are now being promoted. Those all started on TV, and you can Google it. I'm not making this shit up. Where Operation Mockingbird started it, where they would start controlling the media, and they give them lots of money, and then they put these type of stories in, so you get used to what you used to be afraid of. Next thing you know, you can change an economy and you can change the social structure of any country. So the one that made the most sense is it doesn't make logical sense. Why would we want men emasculated? It's a lot easier to take over the country. And so if I have the greatest fear to the people that really run this world, it is not the president. And again, I don't want to sound like a conspiracy theory, but spend 40 years studying the shit like I did and prove it wrong. Even the most liberal professor I had in college pulled me up on stage because I was talking about this in the 80s, pulled me up on stage. We went head to head on every single thing except this. This guy studied this even longer than I did, and he said, sadly, it's true. But there's a very small group of the financial elite that really run the show. They create wars and fund both sides. They control the media, they control the big pharma, they control the power, the control. And in order to keep that, you have to get people at the bottom fighting with each other. You have to get people to forget how powerful they are. There is nothing more powerful than an awakened human being. And that's the only thing that can topple the power structure that currently exists. And I don't give a crap if you're a Republican or a Democrat. I go all the way back before Nixon. And if Nixon was one of the most conservative presidents we ever had, and he was the first one to propose a guaranteed income for everybody. That's essentially communism. And why would a Republican do that? Because he answered to certain people. Every president, even though I loved Reagan, he did the same damn thing. And he got nailed on certain things. And Carter and Clinton, I used to study this stuff and wanted to go into politics until I realized that the people who fund it, there was a really good study that showed to buy the presidency, it takes $3 to $5 billion. Well, when you can print your own money, that doesn't mean anything. To buy the Congress and the Senate, because they all take money from everybody. How is it possible that somebody makes $100,000 as a congressman or a president, and then within 5 to 10 years, they have a net worth over $100 million? And so what's happened is, I believe, Larry, that we've been sold out as a country. They have used us, taken away the warriors out of us, made us passive, and conditioned us from grade school. We have been ridiculed for being men from the time we were in grade school. Larry, put your hand down and wait your turn. Wait for Sally. Sally, you show him what to do. Notice how compliant Sally is. And Larry, stop talking. And so, Larry, get off the jungle gym. Larry, stop. Don't play roughhouse. Larry, no tag. Why can't you sit and read like Sally? And so this has been conditioned. And 70% of men's influencers are generally female. So you have your teachers in the school, your social workers,
Oh,
your
yeah.
librarians, your churches. So to me, I've looked at this, but in reality, if we don't wake up as men, and I mean authentic masculine, it doesn't mean how big your biceps are, your bank account. It means you stand for something and you're willing to go ahead and get involved and be the change we know is needed. So that's kind of my take on it. I'm at a point too, I'm almost 60. I'll be 60 this year. I've overcome cancer and a few other things. I don't have time to spew a bunch of crap, but I always challenge everybody. Don't take my word for the truth. Get in research, and please, please do not listen to the media. There are 6 corporations that own all of it, and they are telling you what to think. Critical thinking was removed from our school system on purpose. Civics and pride of country was removed from our school system on purpose. Now we're paying the problem and the consequences of that. I hope people listening to this will realize that our country is in danger. The free world is in danger, and we are the light of the world. And if we don't stand up and fight for our country and get it back on track, the people that have been controlling it for a very long time win, and we all lose.
Not to, I'm curious, where do you think we're going in the next 5 years?
I think that there are people that want total control. I think there are people that want us to be part of a global subservient. And if you listen to the World Economic Forum, he's flat out there. You're not going to have things and you're going to like it. I think that there's a resentment towards America and Canada because of what we do have compared. And so that's why they're letting us in. We're in big trouble. But what's great, when this is happening, it is awakening people to realize this is unacceptable. 51-year-old man who pretends to be a woman and he's in a 13-year-old girl's locker room and the school system protects it. I don't know about you. Don't want a 51-year-old man changing in the dressing room with my 13-year-old daughter.
No.
Absolutely not. And if that now becomes the norm, we have to pretend. But what that's doing is waking people up to say that's not acceptable. And when the grown men who are pretending to put on a dress and say they're a woman go and rape girls in Target bathrooms and these other things, that doesn't get covered because the same corporations that run the media don't want that narrative. But it's time for men that stand up for their families and stand up for traditional American values. So where is it going? If we don't step up, it's over. I really hate to say that, but the people at charge, take a look at China, take a look at the several million people in slavery. It's very easy when you take away free speech, you take away right to defend yourself, you take away true media to have an honest conversation. For God's sakes, they censored 1,000 doctors about a certain vaccine who they had a treatment plan that worked 97% of the time, but they were censored and threatened to lose their medical license if they spoke about it. That's a problem. We have never in American history had that happen except for now. So the good part is it's waking people up. You're going to take sides and it's not negotiable. You're going to start fighting for what we believe is right, or we're going to be taken over by people who don't have our best interests in heart. And I hate to bring it in a dark topic, but it's happening.
What do you think are the most important needs of men right now that are not being addressed that would actually change this?
The biggest part, again, like I said, the most powerful thing is an awakened human being. That's man and woman, by the way. And so part of that is you have to resist the cognitive dissonance that is making people think, oh, well, I think it was Steve Jobs said, it's easy to fool people, but it's nearly impossible to prove they've been fooled, right? To get them to believe they've been fooled. So there's so many cases where this happens, where it's like, oh yeah, look at this wonderful bill, and all of a sudden you lose more rights. The government does that. What men, I would say, are lacking is really belief in themselves again. We have been programmed against our masculinity, where male privilege, all this stuff that we've been taught. What is it? Male supremacy, misogyny, and there's all these labels now that have us afraid to speak the truth. That's a problem. So it's like a father who defends his family. If somebody breaks in half of the country, if a father's defending his family from somebody that comes in to rape and kill them, he can go to jail. That's a problem. I'm sorry, but we have a right to defend ourselves. And if somebody means ill will on my family, you have every right to defend yourself. But the fact that you have to go to court to prove it, you're guilty until you're proven innocent. But it's a bigger question that you ask. What do men need is really to start believing in themselves again, to look beyond the programming that we've had, to forget about the Homer Simpsons and the Al Bundys. Realize, guys, that it is up to us. We are here more than our bank account. We're here more for a white picket fence and a mortgage. But what that means is it comes with some responsibility to lead by example, to start going after that, make good choices, and really start living by example. And that also, even 70% of the country's overweight. That's a problem. 38% are morbidly obese. 300,000 people a year die of diabetes related being overweight. 700,000 a year die from heart disease. So that again, if I want to emasculate and take away a power of a country, I want them fat. They even did it in that movie, that cartoon movie where they showed Americans had to leave the little machine, I forget what it was called, that goes from back to Earth. And everybody's so fat, they're rolling around in wheelchairs. We're not that far off of that. So I'd say that the men need to really kind of get back into what we're here to do. And there's a lot of places as well that are doing that, whether that's through the church, whether that's through, I know Native American groups are starting to reclaim that power. I know military was, and really decide what it means for you to be a man. When you say you're going to protect your family or you're going to honor your family, what does that mean? Are you going after your goals? And for example, if somebody's looking at your life from the outside, would they be inspired enough to change their own? So if somebody in my girls, if my girls, I want them to have a great life, they need to see me doing it first. So again, don't just settle for mediocre. Good is the mortal enemy of greatness. So the big part of what I love to do is challenge people to get back to those dreams, get back to what the part of them that has already done greatness and make that their default. So that would be a part that I'd say that would change everybody's life if they would remember.
Let's talk about, I think, some of the confusion that a lot of men have. And I used to, I don't know if you were in this camp, but I was there big time. And I'll share with you what that confusion is, right? Is I see men, I can't remember what the recent statistics were, but I think it was 15% of men over the age of 35 can actually identify a best friend.
Mm-hmm.
Only 15%. And I'm talking about the best friend that you can call at 3 o'clock in the morning because you need a ride,
Yeah.
like, or something's really bad, right? So like that's the type of friendship I'm talking about. So we have a lot of men, we're if you look at the way the world operates now, right? We've never been more connected. And
Mm-hmm.
I use that term very loosely. We've never been more connected because of technology, but we've never been more disconnected at the same time. And one thing I'll tell you is that men don't view, for a lot of us, I'm not saying every guy, but a lot of us, they don't view them doing their own personal development, their own growth, their own work, their own, constantly sharpening the
Yep.
sword of
Yep.
excellence, right? As necessary, because they're like, well, if I do that, I'm actually taking time away from my family, and that's wrong. So like
Right.
if you see where men really live, right? And I'm not talking about their home, I'm talking about where they spend their time. They live in two different camps. They're either at work, working, providing, and I can't remember, I think it was 82% of men go to a job that they to some
Don't like.
degree don't
Yeah.
like.
Yep.
So you have eight out of 10 men who are going to a job that they don't like, right? To provide. And then if they're not providing, if they're not at work, well, then they're with family. And they
Yep.
don't deviate from those two worlds because they're like, because of guilt, right?
Yep.
But at the same time, like, I want to inspire and encourage men, like, the best gift that you can actually give your family is the best you,
Yes.
right? And to take time to do that. And if you're not taking time to do that, you're actually teaching your kids to do this wash,
Settle.
rinse, repeat, settle, be in the drift as well, right?
1,000%. The Bible talked about, and I've seen this before, and it's not just for spirituality, but when two or more are gathered in my name, I am there. Well,
I'm
I
there, yeah.
believe that is actually about a purpose. I believe that's about a goal as well, not just the church. I believe when like you and me get together and we get connect, we will create a new energy about what's possible. We start inspiring each other. We start doing that. So there is an absolute power of a group if they're aligned on a purpose. The second thing is a man without vision shall perish. That's a man or woman as well. If you don't have a goal that inspires you, you're already dying. So you're absolutely correct on that. And there's another part that I would say for me, and you're right on those two camps. That's where people go. But what drives me crazy is the media gives no credit to the man who will get up in the morning and go do trash so his family has food. They give no credit to somebody if they're working a job that they don't like because they don't have a jet. And there's so many subliminal images that if you don't have a hedge fund, if you don't have a jet, if you don't have the lifestyle of any of these guys that are hyper wealthy, that you're less of a man. And that is not true, but it's programmed. We all know about how society and the marketing make women think they need bigger breasts, they need the new makeup, they need the new clothes in order to be worthy. Men, if you're not tall, dark, and handsome, you're already losing because that story's been repeated a million times. I see women, what are you looking for in a man? Oh, tall, dark, and handsome. Oh, he's a doctor, he's an attorney. That's it. What about the rest of us? What about the other people where we're good men? Why did that not become important? And so when I hear that, I first want to honor the man who will go ahead and set his immediate ambitions aside to serve his family. I think that's a huge high calling. And I'm tired of people not getting acknowledged for it. I see nothing but mad respect. I'll give you two examples. Leodon and Osman. They came up from El Salvador. Unfortunately, I lost Leodon to leg cancer and bone cancer. But these were these two brothers who came up from El Salvador. Absolutely love these two. They were wash dishes. And I watched Leodon and Osman. They would work 8 hours for us at one restaurant, go to another restaurant, work for another 6 hours, and they would send most of their money back and they worked their ass off to provide for their family. I was like, holy crap, that to me was impressive. Sure, they're not going to be a banker, they're not going to be an attorney, but I saw men protecting and providing for their family and doing it. They didn't complain one time. They wanted more, but that for them, they created something. So I first want to start by honoring men who will do that. The second thing that I would say too is that when you're doing this, 82% don't like it. I would start there. I would start by saying, hey, get clear and clean on why you're doing it. That alone will help me do it. If I know I'm doing this because my family could provide, they'll be able to go to college and have a better life. That will allow me to get back at what I'm doing and be proud of it instead of God. And the reason you don't feel proud of it is because society, on every TV show, on every variety show, on every magazine, they're glorifying all the billionaires, the guys with the Lamborghinis, the Ferraris. There's no mention of the fact which ones of them made it from fraud or went bankrupt or lost it or lost their family. So the value system has been programmed away. I'd like people to get back to really taking stock in the fact, if you're a good man, own that, be proud of that. That is very rare right now. If you choose to get back in your right, get back in shape, that's something that will inspire your whole family. And again, let's walk this through 10, 20 years. Do you want to be the father walking your daughter down the aisle? Because if you keep going on the path right now and you're overweight and you're obese, you might not be the guy because too many people are dying. So I would say getting back connected to that. Now, there's a hidden story. Anytime people change, they have to first get clear on the goal. What do they want? And for me, for example, I decided a while back I wanted to have a superhero body. If I'm going to go through life, I want to be able to go ahead and be the best version of me. Well, that's going to require some changes. I love my fast food. I love my trailer park foods. I love my, McDonald's and Jack in the Box but I had to decide, do I want to be 212 pounds with a 49-inch waist, or do I want to be 170 pounds with a 30-inch waist and be able to do amazing things? But what happened is my girls saw me step into that power. They started to step into theirs. It wasn't anything I said. And all of a sudden, as I stepped in, I was working my ass off, but I still found time to get up in the morning. I still found time to clean up my diet. I still found time to reach out to experts to help me. Next thing you know, I was in great shape. About 200 people on the cross country team, and one parent ran with the kids everywhere. Guess which one? So
That'd be
what
you.
happened exactly?
Yeah.
Yep, exactly. And so the time that we think we don't have for our kids, it's woven in becoming the best version of ourselves. And I'll tell you a story about what activated me because I believe this is true for everybody. When my daughter was in sixth grade, she is a light. Her name's Montana, and she is the most beautiful girl in terms of not just her beauty, but her light and energy. As a kid, people go, "Oh my God!" But ever since she was a kid, you'd see other kids just kind of bully her, push her down in the balls at McDonald's. She'd have the little ball in hand, and they'd take it and push her down. And it was like, "What is this deal?" In sixth grade, she was a straight A student. She went through puberty in fourth grade because of all the milk she drank. So she's 5'4", 5'5" in fourth grade. So
Wow.
she got bullied for that. And she was a bit chubby and she had terrible eye hand coordination. And again, me wanting boys, I wanted boys when I started. And so now, what do you do with a girl that can't literally catch a ball? You can't play catch with her. It hit her in the face, broke her nose. She tried to kick a soccer ball, missed it, fell on her butt, broke her toe. I mean, and so guess what? Sixth grade, I found out that in PE, they'd go up to the top of the track from down on the blacktop. They'd go up there, and there were three girls that would circle my daughter and chant, fat kid, oh, she's gonna blow, fat kid, how slow can she go? And they would just taunt her. The teachers were down on the blacktop. They didn't see it. So pretty soon she couldn't get around them because she couldn't run a lap. I later found out these were the girls on the cross country team. These were really skinny girls. One was a quote unquote model, and they were the mean girls like in the movie. So this went on and it progressed. I didn't know about it because Montana would just put on a mask and do it. Then it started when they came down right after was lunch. So she'd go to lunch and go to sit with her friends. But when she starts walking through all the kids and all the things, the girls would start and everybody started chanting the same thing. So the whole lunch area started chanting fat kid, fat kid. And so she ended up eating her lunches in the bathroom, okay, alone, crying. So one day I noticed Montana came home and she smiled, but you could tell as a father, you could tell the smile was there, but something was wrong. So I sat down next to her and I said, baby, what's wrong? She sat on my lap, 5'5", right? Big girl, but still a little girl inside. And she sobbed for about 20 minutes. And finally, in between her tears, when her tears and sobbing started, she goes, Daddy, can you teach me to run fast? Okay. Now, my associations, when I was at Buds, I ran on 2 stress fractures on the left, one on the right. Then I had the blisters that were so big, they would rip off the bottom of your boots on your heels and your feet, and the blister underneath would rip off too. So you're going through that many layers. My crotch was red and bleeding because they get you wet and sandy before you do anything. So and chafing there. So it would rub your legs literally so they're bleeding. So when Montana told me that, Daddy, I want you to teach me to run fast, I came from a detesting of running. I was really fast. I could do 3 miles in boots and pants and wet pants in about 17:30. I could run a mile and a half in about 4:20 mile. Okay. And I hated it because I had so many painful associations. But in that moment, my immediate instinct was, baby, you tell me your name. I'm going to teach you how to drop that bitch in front of everybody. We will make it public. They will not mess with you for the rest of your life. I guarantee it. And I will take the hit with the principal and the attorney. I said, because this was really bad. My wife's idea was, let's talk to the principal, which would have made it worse. And my daughter said, no. My daughter said, no, Daddy, I just want you to teach me how to run fast. And I'm going to love them no matter what. And I was like, oh, yeah, let's see how good that works. So I start reaching out to every professional runner on the planet, every woman champion, every coach that I could find, every book that I could find. And I started going with my daughter, even though at this time I was a shell of who I was. I was the guy you talked about. I was making good money in real estate and I couldn't get out of bed. I had third stage non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. That didn't wake me up. My dad died. My mom died. My workout partner committed suicide. I lost $60,000 when somebody begged me to do a property management. I was a shell of who I was. My daughter having that happen snapped me out of it like that. It wasn't the cancer that snapped me out. It was my daughter. And when that activated the warrior in me. So I took her. She doesn't have the energy to fight. That's my energy. So we started running and I made a lot of mistakes, but I reached out to coaches. I reached out to coaches. I reached out to everybody I could. And the women, the men, because I'd tell them the story, they jumped on board. Olympic gold medal champions, world record holders are coaching me and through my daughter. Needless to say, 18 months later, she is the fastest girl in all of San Diego. She won it's a 5K, 3.1 miles, 250 girls. She beat everyone by minutes. But that wasn't the most impressive part. True to her word, when my daughter got on the cross country team, there were 25 girls in her age bracket, right? 25 to 30. The bullies were the captains. So they had their own little clique. And Montana was at the back, and then she started doing that. But after Montana would win a race, she would turn around and high five and hug every one of the girls, every one of the other team as well. And what happened was the heavy girls at the back, like Montana used to be, at first they thought that she was teasing them because that's what the bullies did. Instead, she'd hug them and they'd start celebrating. And now what happened is there's 30 girls celebrating and the bullies lost their power. Now, this continued until she ended up winning the next year. She became the fastest girl in all of San Diego, ranked in the top 25 in the country. And we would go to events and there would be kids from 20 to 30 other schools coming to find Montana to hug her and see how she was doing. And true to her word, her love changed. It woke me up and it woke up everyone on that team to a point where it's the first championship they ever won, the first champion that they ever won. She set records. Then she went to a school and then took them to the second place in state. And in that, it woke me up out of mine and we ran together every single day, whether we wanted to or not. And we made fun and we talked and we connected. To this day, she's 26, going to be 27, finishing medical school. And I'm still on her Facebook page as me and her hugging. So it might take something like that, but that's what woke me up. And I had a similar event with my other daughter. My other daughter became a champion in her own way, and then that led her in the discipline. But it all stemmed from me getting out of my own crap, realizing I had a responsibility as a father and a dad, and I had to get beyond my suffering and complacency and become the best version of me to help them become the best version of them.
Man, what an incredible story. Just to recap all that, like as a dad, like I feel you on the like just like I'm gonna teach you how to fight, and we're just gonna like go right, like we're just gonna like humiliate this person that's picking on
Yeah.
you. I was bullied growing up as well, and but you know what I really love too is that you combined your own self development and growth with your daughter,
Hmm.
and you know it's interesting, man. Like I've got two older boys, and one is going to be 18 at the end of March. The other one is 17. I'm sorry, 16. And these young men have such a love for physical fitness.
Yeah.
And I scratch my head and I'm like, how did they get there? Like, how did they do that? Like, neither one of them are into drugs. Neither one of them are
Right.
into alcohol. Neither one of them are into vapes. Like my 16-year-old in particular, he will end relationships, end friendships with people who are into bad things because he's like, listen, I'm in this for a D1 scholarship. Like that is my goal. It's my dream. Like, and I'm not gonna do it by hanging out with knuckleheads. And ever since these boys were younger, my wife and I would take them out in the garage and we would do family fitness together, right? And we would do these things. And my kids, like that's their go-to, like for their therapy, right? For their like for their headspace, you know, like
Hmm.
there are times when one of them's crabby and I'm like, hey man, like what's going on? They're like, man, I just had a rough day. I need to go work out. And I love the fact that that's something that they really leverage, right? And but I think if we as men were to do more of that, where we didn't have to necessarily have two separate worlds of like our own personal development and growth, you
Right.
can actually integrate those things with your
Thousand
family.
percent.
And like what a cool journey to go on, you know, together is something like that.
And you know what's amazing about that was we would go on runs and 10, 15-mile runs in the heat. And I remember there were times where she might not talk for the first 1 to 3 miles. And then little by little, she'd open up. And by the time we're halfway through and finishing, man, it's just this bond. So the same thing with boys. And when you're doing that, it's like the activity brings you together. And the other reason why you said you weren't sure why they're doing it because they had you as an example. It's the, for example, one of the greatest plights of most of America is that, and you can see this in different demographics as well. The problem is not necessarily color; it's the lack of role models. And so I saw multiple families because the school she went to was very, very exclusive. It was arguably the number one school in all of California for activities and sports. And I noticed that this kid here had two doctor parents. Guess what? She became a doctor. The other sister had a doctor. This guy here was a research scientist. Guess what this one did? Became a research scientist. So, what happens when you're in an environment like that? You grow up not believing, you're thinking, I could be a doctor. Dad is a doctor. Mom's a doctor. I could be a business owner. My mom and dad are business owners. But if you grew up in a family or a culture where your role models are drug dealers or rappers or something like that, you're really at a disadvantage because you don't know what's possible. And I had the benefit of watching my dad build multi-million dollar companies and destroy it with alcohol. So guess what? I don't drink. I chose to not drink when I was 21. It was the last time I drank. And I'm not knocking the people that do, but for me, that was an e-ticket ride to poverty because of my tendencies. So I would say that they learned from you. And again, everyone here today, it's a new day. And don't tell me you don't have time. Everyone has 168 hours a week. So I used to start my first call on my team at 7 a.m. and I would work sometimes till 7 and 9 at night. I get the working hard. Guess what I did? Started getting up at 5. Then I was getting up at 4. Then I was getting up at 3:45 so I could get 5 to 6 miles running in. Then I could get 1 to 2 hours of lifting and training in. Then I'd come back, shower, have bulletproof coffee, and then I'd start my day. They didn't even notice I was gone because they were still asleep. And I would drive her to school. I would drive her 40 minutes to school, then go to work, and then I'd come back and do the same thing till 7 at night. So I get it, but there's always a way for the committed, and there's always an obstacle for those that are dabbling and not. So that's the part too, where as I owned my own greatness, they were able to see theirs as well. And I remember, ironically, it was Montana again. I was really into bodybuilding and powerlifting, and I'm not a big guy, I'm 5'7", but I was training really heavy. I had a great workout partner. We were obsessed. I mean, we had our coolers with us everywhere we went, our chicken breast, our tuna, our white, our you name it. I went when I was 21 years old, I only weighed 111 pounds. That's how small I was, fully grown. And I got up to 210 pounds at my biggest, and I had a 29-inch waist. So I was really big. And Then I did this extreme diet and I got way out of, I hated it, right? It was insane. And I'd stopped lifting for about a year and a half. And I went and ate McDonald's before Supersize Me. I was that guy. I went from 210 pounds of with a 29-inch waist to 212 pounds with a 49-inch waist in 1 year. The 30 days before I finally realized how fat and unhealthy I was, because it was also the pain that I was going through with the stress of everything, hating my life, hating my job, hating my testosterone was plummeting, cancer, all that shit. But my daughter was sitting on my lap, and this was before they knew how to filter. She goes, "Daddy, you're fat." And I was like, "Oh crap." And my mom, before she died, she could find the blessing in anything. And even my mom goes, "Mark, you're really fat." And I was like, shit, well, that woke me up. And that started me back to, so they watched me rebuild my greatness. And it wasn't easy. I had to clean up a lot of behaviors. I had to change my thoughts. I had to change my beliefs. I had to change my associations. I had to start making it a priority, because if there's nothing left for me to give, I can only give away what I have. And all I had in that moment was self loathing and overwhelm and frustration. So as I reclaimed my power, I had more of me to give to the family. I had more of me to inspire, and they work together. So we have the time, and if you will make that commitment, be the dad you think you've always wanted to be. If you don't come from a great family, then choose to create it. Be that example. Break the cycle. So far, I've broken the cycle of alcohol in my family lineage. I've broken the cycle of poverty in my family lineage. I've broke the cycle of the drama in my family lineage. And it's like, that's what I'm going to challenge everyone here. It's not too late. If you've got one more day, I don't care if you're 400 pounds, there are people out there that can help you. Don't quit. So that would be the part that I would say, is to really get after it and look in the mirror and ask yourself some simple questions. Is this my dream life? Am I living at my best? Is there another version of me that I had that's still alive? And if that little flicker of hope is still there, you can change. And then you have to decide, what can I do today? And the more right things you do, the quicker things change. And all of a sudden, if you hate your job, great. Get in alignment with it first and saying, I'm doing this to provide for my family. Within 1 year, I'm going to move up the scale. I'm going to have something that inspires me. And you can start taking those steps and start doing it. So that's the funnest thing that I get to do. And it's absolutely, I see people doing it every day. So if you're out there listening, don't think it's over. It's only over because you believe it is. If you will change that one thought, you can start over and make something. And the second half will be better than anything you've had.
I really hear probably some of the things you learned by doing work with Tony Robbins for a long time. And there's so many people out there that they don't believe that that's possible,
That's
right?
right.
They don't buy into it. Kind of an interesting, very interesting story was that I I used to buy into the whole like thing of well, I'm not going to be a good dad. I'm not going to be a patient
Mhm.
dad. I'm not going to, because like that's how I grew up, right?
Right.
And what I'll tell you is I actually had an absolutely major pivot point at UPW in
Hmm.
2014 in Dallas. And it was a Tony Robbins event. And I literally remember writing down exactly what you just said, that if I change my goals, if I change my beliefs, and if I change my behaviors and habits, like truly anything is possible, right?
Yep.
And I'll never forget that. And and how I wouldn't say it's easy, but it's simple, right, to do.
Right.
Like it actually isn't that hard. But why do you think we overcomplicate it so much? And just a really quick funny story that I think will really hit this home. What we focus on grows, our words have power, and our story will be whatever meaning we give it and our perception, and we'll follow that. I had a guy that actually signed up. He filled out an application for our group coaching environment. And this is still when I was doing calls where I would meet with people. We now have a team that does that. But this guy hops on a Zoom call, and we got to know each other for a few minutes. And I said, "Hey, why are we talking today?" He's like, "Well, I have anger issues." And I'm like, "Okay." And that's not uncommon. I've heard that.
Right.
I'm like, "Well, tell me more about that." He's like, "Well, I just don't have any patience with my kids." I was like, "Okay." I was like, "Well, have you learned any skills to be more resilient, to be more patient, to create space between stimulus and response, right? And he's like, no, you don't understand. And this is where it got really kind of juicy. He's like, you don't understand. He goes, it's actually genetic. And I was like, what? And he
That's a
goes,
good
it's
cop out.
actually genetic. And I was like, okay, well, explain that. And he goes, well, my grandfather was a very angry man. My dad was a very angry man, had anger issues. So I have it. And he's like, it's in my genetics. And I just laughed. And I remember you and I were joking that I've had Gary John Bishop on this
Mhm.
podcast, I think 6 times now. I'll never forget Gary, coming on the podcast and him saying, like, let's open up your brain and you point to the part where it's genetic that you have anger issues, right? It's just the story that you're buying into. But I know that people are living a life because they're buying into a story that may or may not be
Yeah.
true. So my question to you is, for those of us out there who know that we can do something different, that we can actually rewrite a different story. Where do you think we start? Because I think that right now, man, we live in this age where there's so much information and there's so many things that are coming at us. And I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that most individuals just have no clue, like, well, where's my launching pad for this? Like, what do I actually do first?
First thing is to have an honest look in the mirror. And this requires a man to really humble himself about kind of looking in the mirror. And this is not to do with your wife. This is not to do with your friends. This is for you to do. Look in the mirror and ask yourself, is this, if there's every body on the planet, meaning I've got Jabba the Hutt on the one side, John Kerr, Jim Candy, or, some of these fat, super fat things. And then we've got the skinny ultra marathon runner, right? Who's so skinny, his quadricep looks like your pinky. Anywhere between there, if you look at yourself in the mirror, do you have the body of your dreams? Yes or no? Okay. If you're below your dream, okay, then that's something I can own and fix. And I don't care if you have back issues, knee issues, those are usually a reflection of your bad choices, but you're not owning it. The second thing is I would have you look at your income in your life. Start looking at your finances, look at your business, look at your job. Are you absolutely inspired? Are you fulfilled? Are you waking up inspired where you can't wait to go make change? If the answer is no, then own it and let's fix it. Are your relationships, is it still toe curling passion or is it getting stale? Own it, work to fix it. Are you the example to your kids that you want? You have to look in the mirror and decide. And I'll give you an example. Tony did this. I asked Tony, we're at a director's meeting, and I asked him and I said, Tony, when you work with Byron Scott, what are you doing? He goes, real simply, he goes, I get 5 different areas. Let's say free throws, mental prep, dribbling practice, and he had 5 different areas that would determine whether he was good because Byron Scott was on the Lakers and they were losing, and Byron Scott couldn't hit the side of the wall. So he got him to identify what are the 5 keys for him to be at his best. Then he said, on a scale of 1 to 10, rank them like your free throw shooting. On a 1 to 10, what is it? It's a 7. Okay, well, that's not world class. What does he need to do to get from a 7 to an 8 or a 9? Then he looked at his mental prep and he was a 3. And he goes, what do you need to do to get that to a 5, a 7, and a 9? And then he went through the different pieces and then they got into intentional action. Now, I found you can do it even faster if you get your emotions into it. Because first you set the target with your brain. Your masculine is the head. The masculine is the one that sets the goal. Then we move into the feminine, which we have access to, which is the emotion. When I, for example, with my daughter, I had never trained a runner before. By the time I was done, I was a world-class coach. Multiple certifications. I have researchers from high supplement companies asking me what college I coach for. And so what happens though is that I felt my daughter becoming a champion. I imagined her standing on stage. I imagined, and that feeling activated me. The same will work for everyone here. It's the logic. If I'm making 50,000 a year and I hate my job, that's where you are. Don't confuse with what's possible. Let's say within a year you have a goal to make 150,000 and have a great job that you love. Okay, cool. So you every day I would do this where I'd hold that feeling and I'd visualize and I'd feel, I'd emotionalize how will it feel when I make $150,000 and my wife is crying because this is going to save the family house? How are the kids going to feel at Christmas when I got them the presents I wanted to get them? How is it going to feel to finally take a family vacation? How is it going to feel to pay off all the debt where we aren't crying and wondering how we're going to get through the day? So the emotion is my connection every day. And by doing that, what will happen is all of a sudden you start looking at things different. At work, you start showing up better. You start doing additional tasks and they start noticing different because you're not in scarcity. You're not in blame or victim mode. You're in victor mode. And by shifting those, the shifts that Tony really didn't get into was your identity. I found that when I step into an identity of my superhero version of me, I've got that guy. I've also got a supervillain that's lazy, a supervillain version of me that's resentful and angry and feels life's not fair. I had to stop that guy from driving my car in my life and put the superhero back in charge. And I did some daily actions that will help share with your listeners. Number one is I did a brag book. No one taught me this, but I started every day giving myself the gift of 5 minutes of writing down, go in your book, get a journal that is for you and you only. Don't share it with your wife or kids or anyone. This is for you. And start writing down, what did you do in your life that you're proud of? What did you do where you showed up for a brother when he needed help and you're the only one that was there? You picked up a friend that needed a ride. You made a sacrifice so your kids could have something. You skipped a meal so they could have food. What are the things you've done that you're proud of? Now, what happens, this gets back to everything we've talked about. Now, the failures of our life are what are keeping at the forefront of our mind. Dr. Joe Dispenza and Bruce Lipton and the guys doing a lot of work on this said we have 30 to 50,000 internal thoughts a day. Without programming, 90 to 95% are disempowering and disembowel us. So we have to change the inner dialogue. The brag book started helping me do that. If I have an issue with fear, then I started adding courage. Where in my life did I show up with courage? And now all of a sudden, those are references that reprogram the brain. The second thing I did is a gratitude journal. I do the front half as my goals and my brag book, flip it over, and that became my gratitude journal. I was the angry guy you talk about. When I was in the back row of a Tony Robbins event, I was like, F you, man. That's not your content. That's bullshit. I had just had cancer surgery on Monday. They took out 19 lymph nodes out of my crotch because the biopsy showed I had a third degree. I had it in multiple places, non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. And in the back room, Tony's up there. People are coming up and telling him to get the F out of my face. I mean, I was dark. I was hoping I'd get hit by a car. Everything in my life seemed to be a shit show. My dad died. My mom died. I lost $60,000 cash output. My everything was bad. The country was falling apart. I could barely get out of bed. And now I had cancer, and I get a grapefruit size thing in my crotch of lymph because they don't tie them up after they're done. They let them heal. And it would pop and it would go down my leg. So that's where I was. And a voice came in my head that said, would you take the cancer for your girls? And it was so loud. I turned around to see who said it. Nobody was there. And it said it again in a defiant tone. Would you take the cancer for your girls? And I said, yes, I would. And it said somewhere a parent doesn't get that choice. And in that one instant, I found gratitude. I went from being resentful, angry, victim, all the stuff that life's not fair, the country's going to shit. And in that moment, I found gratitude and I started crying. And I felt like a rush coming over me. And I said, I don't know if I have 6 months or a year to live, but I'm going to commit to living my purpose. And my purpose was simple: to help others identify, inspire, and awaken the greatness in others until they own it themselves. And that meant I had to change everything. I mean, I had 2 job offers for 7-figure job offers, which I turned down to go work for Tony for a lot less money because I was going to do it. I didn't know how, I didn't know why, but I was committed because I didn't know how much time I had left. Jump ahead, I obsessed on gratitude. I changed my core frequency every day by asking a better question. What am I grateful for right now? And in asking that over and over again, and then I asked, where can I win? I asked a second question, how can I win? What does God want me to see or whatever? Jump ahead 60 days. The doctors are calling me and saying, we've never been able to do this in 40 years. We don't know why. We don't know how. We've checked the biopsies. We've double checked. We've triple checked. You had non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. We can't figure out, but you're cancer free now. And I kind of already knew because I shifted my core frequency from anger. I was the guy like that had it. My dad was angry. My grandfather, I had that too. But what I also had was the ability to break the cycle. So I started obsessing on gratitude. So when I flip my book over, a gratitude journal, I just don't write down what I'm grateful for. I feel gratitude. I'm so grateful, honestly, for you. I don't care what challenge God gives me or the universe gives me. If my girls are healthy, I'm happy. And if I know that I have one more day, I'm happy. So that shifted the core frequency of what I was taking into the world. So I reprogrammed my brain like Joe Dispenza talks about, and I started changing my self-talk. Instead of saying what's wrong with the situation, why are they going to screw me? I changed it to what am I grateful for? How can I win right now? What do they need? And it shifted. And then that opened up new opportunities. And that's actually how I ended up at Tony Robbins. And so I knew about Tony before he started. I was in the game as well. And so I ended up being his director of coaching and director of sales training, and then turned around a lot of those departments as well. But I was really there to build an army of light warriors and other people that would speak this and go empower human beings. And the people that don't believe it's possible, it's only because you only have your own view to look at. I've had the ability to see thousands and tens of thousands of people implement this and change their life. So it does work.
So rewiring of the brain, right?
Yep.
So, I love this, which is the quality of our life is determined by the quality of the questions we ask ourselves and those around us. I've heard that before,
Yep.
right? And for you, it seemed like that was the catalyst for change.
It
Is
was.
it's the gratitude, right? And it's the I love this brag book thing too, and I love the fact that it's like, hey, this is just for me,
Yep.
to get my head right. Because you're right. I think it's human nature for all of us to be like, what's wrong, missing, and broken,
Yeah. I
right?
got a
What's wrong,
98
missing?
on the test.
Yeah,
What did I miss? We
right.
don't celebrate a 98. We get
Yeah,
pissed off that those two questions were worded poorly and now I missed it because you didn't do your job right.
right.
So the
Man,
part that I love about, yes, you can reprogram, but there's something that happens. There's something called the success cycle. And the success cycle is pretty simple. You've got four different quadrants, right? The first one is about your goals, your identity, and your beliefs. And then the second one, based on what I believe is true, like life is unfair. If that goes to the second section, which activates what's called our potential. Now, if I think that there's no way to win, that I'm already done, am I going to use more or less of my potential?
way less,
Less. If I'm using less of my greatness and less of my potential, am I going to take more action or less action?
way less,
Way less. And if I take less action for a goal, am I going to get a better result or a worse result?
worse.
And I just spiraled into the gutter, proving it. Hey, Larry, I told you I can't win. There's no way to win. The deck is stacked against me. I'm 48 years old. And so we can change that. If I have a goal that inspires me, if I have a belief system set up where these are also true support with evidence, and that version of me, if I know there's always a way to win when I'm committed, am I going to use more of my potential or less?
You use more.
What? And if I know there's always a way to win and I'm getting the best version, the superhero version of me, which is also there, am I going to be taking more intelligent action, more incessant action? Hell, a lot more.
Yeah, a
And
lot
if
more.
I'm taking more of that with the best part of me, am I going to start winning? Absolutely. I told you I always find a way to win. And just by changing the success cycle, we can change what actions we start to take. We don't even know what those actions are going to be. And so the other piece that I did, I'll give you just an applicable on this because this is important. I started doing this. When I went to work for Tony, I went from selling real estate where I made a lot of money, but I hated it because everyone was losing their house. That contributed to my pain about I'm taking the house because they lost it in the short sale and foreclosure, and I helped them. I'd make 10 to 30 grand, but they lost their house, and I care about people, so that didn't feel good. And then I left to go to work for Tony. And at first, I didn't make a lot of money. I went to Tony because my wife wanted me to have something secure. And I went to there and it was getting paid after taxes. I was only making 1,000 a week. Okay. Now my bills were way more than that. I was upside down. I had to now drive 45 minutes to get there. I had to now put up in bumper to bumper traffic. But when I went there, that voice came in my head and it said, come here and find 100 warriors of light. Never heard that term. And I was like, okay, I'll do it. So I went on faith. And as I started to work there, things started to change because I kept that purpose in front of me to help others identify, inspire their own greatness and help them to own it. So when I did that, I remember something shifted. When I was willing to go for it, things happened. And I remember I was only making $4,000 and my wife started crying because we were about $60,000 just in credit card debt. I had another 60,000 upside down on the property management company that the guy begged me to and then he bailed. I had probably about I don't know how many hundreds of thousands of dollars of debt and I was making $1,000 a week. Yeah, $1,000 a week. And what I did, which came to me as a divine inspiration, is I said, I told Kristen, I need to know specifically what am I up against. Okay. And she's crying as she's doing this. It was about that. And I said, okay, I'll take care of it. And this was another thing that activated me, by the way. So when I stepped back into my warrior, the protector, the father, the man of the house, and I really owned it. All of a sudden, every day I'd put my hand on my heart in the shower and I imagined making $30,000 a day. Now realize I'm working from 7 in the morning till 7 at night for Tony. There's no gap here. And I'm thinking, well, this. So I kept holding the feeling of my wife. I wrote stories about my wife saying how proud she was of me. I remembered imagining her crying, saying we're out of debt because it was dark. And this happened for about 8 days. Every day I had no plan. I was still working for Tony about 60 hours, 70 hours a week. And as I did this in the shower one day, and then I started feeling it more and more as I anchored and changed my program and my frequency. Then, about 8 days into this process, I got 2 phone calls from people wanting to buy a property, but I was out of the real estate game. So I referred them out. And the commissions paid almost immediately because he sold them a foreclosure cash. I made $8,000 out of the blue. That brought me to 12,000. About 4 days after that, the guy that screwed me on the property management company called me and asked me if I would teach him how to close. And I said, yes, but I only have from about 7 or 6:30 till 7:30 in the morning. All the calls have to be done. He said, I'll set the call up. You do the call. I'll do all the follow up. I made $12,000 in commission, or no, $18,000 in commissions that month and made $30,000. I did it the next month and then the next month. And then I didn't do it. I didn't connect every day. I didn't feel it every day. And I went right back to 4. And I was like, whoa,
Wow.
what was I doing? How did I create that? And I got clear on what I had been doing. So I said, screw this, man. I'm going to make 50,000. I got to make up for the 20,000 I lost. And then I got all excited again on 50,000. About 3 days after holding that feeling every day, 50, 50, 50, 50, Tony calls me and said, hey, we've seen what you've done. Would you mind coming to the events and we'll pay you 10%? I made 50,000 that month and never looked back.
My gosh.
And 6 months or so down the road, I pulled my head up because I said, Kristen, I can't focus on the bills. I can only focus on abundance. And I don't want to see a bill. I don't want to hear about it. You got to keep it away from me. I will fix this. And I pulled my head up and I go, baby, I need to know where are we? How much more do we still owe? That's how detached I was from the pain. I obsessed on the process and the focus and the feeling. She goes, what do you mean? I go, how much money do we still owe? She goes, I don't know what you're talking about. Well, honey, it's all paid off.
It's
We've
all
got over
gone.
100,000 in the bank.
Oh my God.
And I was like,
What?
what? Yeah, but that's what happens when you shift your beliefs, your
Yeah.
goal, and you shift what you're focusing on. So I shifted what I focused on, which was the bills and life's not fair. And I shifted to what I'm grateful for. Where's an opportunity? How can I serve? And did that. And I focused on abundance and I created that frequency and I never looked back.
That is so cool. That is awesome. I'm so curious. I would love to see this process that you have. So like I remember you saying like in this box it's this, which is like your
Sure.
goals, your dreams, and then it moves into potential, right? And then
Yeah.
actions. So how does that work? Oh, you got it right there. Look at that.
So first you pick a goal, right?
Okay.
Now, based on the goal, I'm going to be looking at the beliefs I have about it. Like I'm going to make $100,000. My beliefs have to be in alignment with that. Like other people have made that in a day. I've done it before. Then I'm looking at what version of me, my identity. Is it the superhero or the supervillain that I need to call forth? Then my self talk. Every time I think about it, I speak in my head about it as if I have it. That takes me over to potential. Am I using more or less of my potential? If I am using more of my skills, I might build my skills. That's going to allow me to take more action. More incessant action means nonstop, more intelligent. And that changes the result either positively or negatively. But that's the success cycle. And I've updated it because some people weren't talking about the goals. If my goal is to be a sumo wrestler, that's a completely different version of me than if I want to be a marathon runner. My
Right.
actions will be different. So
Yeah.
people, you have to start with the goal. Does it inspire you? Is it really what you want? And when that's in alignment, you get that identity, the higher version of you, you get your beliefs and self-talk in alignment. You're going to use more of your skills and the magic just shows up. And then you start knowing what to do. The pathway starts to show up. And then you do it and you're not resentful about doing it. You're excited to do it, which changes the way the result goes. And you can rapidly become wealthy, rapidly save a marriage, rapidly become the father. There's one thing you said I wanted to point out. You said that you were worried about being an angry father. I've looked at that one point because I had that too, but I've looked at what makes a great father. And it's two things: the desire to be a great father and the commitment. Now, it helps if you have a good example, but I didn't and you didn't. And I don't remember if you said you did or you didn't. Maybe it was the
Did
other guy,
not.
but I did not either. But I chose to be a great father. I chose and I committed to do whatever it was. And that was put, their goals and to make them and to do everything I thought I could do. And I made some mistakes. The biggest mistakes I made is I didn't like institute a family dinner time. I should have done that. If I did it again, I'd have a time where we connect every night. I was connecting every time we ran. So I was getting that connection time, but we had like four different meals, so we didn't eat as much together like that. And we did a lot of stuff together, but that would have even made it even stronger.
Mm, man, that is so cool. And I love the fact that, there's action to be taken. I mean, a lot of people will do the dinner thing, but
Mm-hmm.
I think it's great. Yeah, come together once an evening, or
Yep.
at least once a day and talk. However, I strongly encourage doing what you've done, what I've done, what I've seen many others do is pick something that is something that's positive, something
Yep.
that will challenge you, something that you can grow through, something that's a journey, right? Me and my 16-year-old in 2022, we did a bodybuilding show together.
Nice.
And yeah, and it was his idea. And
I love that.
I loved it too. And I mean, to be honest, man, like I'll never forget. It was December 31st, 2021, and my son told me, and we always get together, all the whole family. It's like, hey, what is Team Hagner doing this year? And we always set like these audacious goals, as families and individuals and that kind of thing. And my son looked at me and he goes, I want to do a bodybuilding show and I want to do it with you. Because I used to compete like
Awesome.
back in the day. I always natural and all that good stuff, but was never really great at it. But I just did it to get in shape. And
Stay in shape.
yeah. And I looked at him and I was like, dude, I'm like 30 pounds from the stage. Like, and I just don't know. And he goes, we'd get to work out together every day. And I'm like, I'm in.
Yep.
I don't care how well I do at this show.
Yep.
Like I'm in, right? And the best conversations and the best experience that I had with that young man was in that gym and those
Yep.
conversations between the sets. And the cool thing too is like I'll never forget sitting at dinner with him. We had our first cheeseburger after we got done with the show. And he was like, and he did really well. And I did actually really well myself. And he was like, "What was your favorite part?" I was like, "What was your favorite part?" He's like, "Oh, getting second in two categories and winning, best poser of the show." And also, I was like, "Yeah." He's like, "What about you?" I was like, "Dude," and I'm like, I had the three medals, and I'm like, I could care less about these. In fact, I know your little brothers want these to hang them in their room, and I'm going to give them to them. I was like, I could have cared less about the place. I was like, I loved every minute we spent for 16 weeks getting ready for this thing, man. And having that journey to go through, right? For you is running, for me and him,
Yep.
it was that. Like that has been like mortar
Yep.
between bricks
Yep.
as far as our relationship and connection, man. Like, and it was so uncertain too. Like I didn't
Yeah.
know like how it was going to turn out. I just had a good feeling of, we were going to do something cool together. But
Yep.
I love the fact that you're encouraging men to do that.
1,000%. And it activates you. It helps you again. I did not realize my daughter's darkest day would become our greatest source of light. I did not realize that was what woke me up. I mean, and I knew about Tony Robbins way before all this stuff, but even still, I was beaten and I was wanting to throw in the towel. And seeing her get bullied, that was something that I wouldn't tolerate. And you're right, man. The hours we spent together running, that's what was the mortar between us. I love
Yeah.
that. And then same thing with Cassidy, my youngest. And then when she wanted to, run and she all of a sudden made it on varsity as a freshman. And then 53 years was the first time her and this other sophomore, they became the leaders of the whole cross country team, men and girl or women, and led them to first league title, made it second CIF and made it to state. In 57 years or 53 years, they never did that. But again, because I was engaged with her, we got really, really close. And that's what I miss. And I'll give you an example of how powerful this is because I won too. When I was running with my daughters in a 90-day cycle, because you do about 12-week cycles per, like in bodybuilding, right? So you're training for 12 weeks minimum. I noticed that in 90 days, I ran 145 times. But when my daughter went to school and I lost my workout partner, I only ran 30 times in the next 90 days. Now she was running every day. That's how much my running dropped when I lost my workout partner and somebody to do it with. And then over summer, it'd come back and we do another 145 runs. And I realized that I did it for her. I benefited, but as an adult now, I need to also do it for me. And that's a part too. Kind of like with you in bodybuilding or training. I don't want to be big. I want to be more functional now. Um, but even that, it's like I'll give you another example: target focused training, which was Navy SEAL training, right? I offered both my girls to do it with me. Montana started crying when I asked her if she wanted to go learn how to fight and destroy bad people. She started crying, didn't want to do it, but I did go with Cassidy, and Cassidy went. She loved it, and again, we got to bond in that space. And it's just what's possible, guys. Don't throw in the towel. I don't care how stuck you are. If you will make some small changes and you will change the way you think, change the version you're showing up, and then the rest starts to take care of itself. Everyone listening can have the best part of their life from here to the second half of their life. And that's the part I'd like to leave people with.
Love that, man. I love that. I want to make sure that the guys in the audience can connect with you if they want to connect with you. What's the best place for them to go do that?
There's a couple things. www.marcvonmusser.com, and I'll spell it MARC, V as in Victor, ON, MUSSER, .com. And that will take you to probably will take you to one of my websites, which explains 111 Days to Greatness. And then also www.soarandroar.com. And that's AND, not the ampersand. So it's SOARANDROAR. And those are the two places to find me. Or find me on Facebook.
Got it. Awesome, man. Well, guys, you're not going to have to look very far if you want to connect with Marc. Head on over to dadedge.com/466 for this show. We'll have all his links in there as well as Facebook, soarandroar.com, marcvonmusser.com, if you would like to connect with Marc. Marc, from my heart to yours, man, this was a killer message, an incredible journey. I really, really loved spending an hour and a half with you today, man. I could easily spend another hour and a half,
Well,
like
let's
every
do it
day.
again. I'll have you on
Yeah,
my show as well because your
love it.
message is critically important as well.
I would love it, my friend. I would love it. Thank you so much for coming on.
Big love.
Big
Let's
love,
rock it.
brother. Yeah.